I think it's safe to say that this generation so far has started off with a goddamn whimper. And that's due to multiple reasons, many of which I've already addressed, but one with which I have yet to really properly dissect is the lack of new IPs that we've seen this generation. Don't get me wrong, they're there, but not only are there a lot of problems with those new IPs, but there simply aren't enough. And that is a problem, and it's part of the reason why the industry is stagnating. It's part of the reason why game sales are declining, despite the happy-go-lucky positive nature that a lot of people in this fucking community would like to make you think that the gaming industry is doing well, when that's just not the case. So, we've noticed that this generation, compared to a lot of the last ones, new IPs have kind of dropped off the face of the planet. There are some good ones. I mean, Bloodborne is an example, that just came out. I like Sunset Overdrive, but a lot of them have either been underwhelming or just lacking in terms of what they bring to the table, in terms of not only quality, but new concepts. And that's something that I really want to hammer home. We're going to be talking about new IPs, why they need to exist, and the problems that we're facing right now with new IPs. The reason why new IPs need to exist is because new IPs, when they're successful, turn into franchises. The franchises that help support the industry. Call of Duty didn't start with Call of Duty 4. There were 3 before it. The same applies to Assassin's Creed. There was Assassin's Creed 2 then came, and then the series kicked off. Yeah, there are new IPs that flop. And that's the risk that happens with new IPs. But when you take a new IP and it's successful, or you take the new IP, it's good, but there's some problems with it, and then you build on top of it, that's when you get the excellent games. There's a reason why second games in series are generally the best. I mean, that's generally the case, right? Uncharted 2, Assassin's Creed 2, Grand Theft Auto 3. You know, a lot of the best games in the franchises are often the sequels because they build on top of what the new IP established, and generally that new IP comes around the turn of the generation. I mean, it happens all the time. It usually starts with the turn of the generation. They get their feet wet, and then they develop upon it. New IPs and middle market games especially, I said this to someone else on the internet, but middle market games that eventually become the big blockbusters that support the industry. It's important that new IPs exist. Franchises can't last forever. You know, the interest in those games eventually dwindles down. But the problem is that this generation, we haven't seen a lot of new IPs. And the ones we have been underwhelming. And that's due to a lot of problems that are really intrinsic to the current state of game development. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed by the roots. The big problem that we have with this modern video game industry is that game development budgets are high. Very high. I mean, fucking hell, some games are costing like upwards of $100 million. And when you've got a budget that big, you got to sell a lot of copies in order for that game to be profitable. I mean, look at Tomb Raider. There's a great example for you. A game that sold 6 million units, but wasn't profitable until a year later when they re-released the game on the new consoles. We have these games that have such bloated development costs, either due to just an overemphasis on graphics, too many developers, or just sheer incompetence, like especially on the part of a company like Square Enix, to where a game needs to sell mountains of copies in order to be profitable. Because at the end of the day, you know, game developers don't give a shit if the game is good or bad. All they want is for that game to turn a profit. And when that happens, what do we have? We have to start having sequels. Because when you are already in a franchise and you know what to expect, you are far more likely to buy a game from that series than buy a new IP that you never played before, potentially from an unproven developer. Something that you don't know you're going to like. And with game prices as high as they are, you know, gaming is not a cheap hobby. With prices that high, it is a lot easier and smarter sometimes to buy into an established franchise than buy into a new IP. And developers know this. I mean, look at a lot of the new IPs that have come out this generation so far. Compare them to the sales of established franchises. I mean, a good example would be like Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. That shit sold like hotcakes. It was the highest, I think behind Grand Theft Auto 5 perhaps, it was the highest selling game last year. And then you compare that to a game like, I don't know, Sunset Overdrive or something. You know, that was a new IP. Sold like, I think it sold like 600, 700,000. So, not bad, but I mean, I doubt that they turned a profit on that game. I mean, let's look at more recent examples. The Order, one of the most vapid games I've ever played in my life. It was a new IP. It sold about 600,000. on a console of 20 million. Meanwhile, Grand Theft Auto 5 for the PS4 sold like 6 million copies from an established, proven franchise compared to a new IP from an unproven developer. There is no way that Sony turned a profit on the Order 1886. No way. With a game with that sort of budget, that development time, no way. They took a risk. Did it pay off? I don't think so. I mean, it's not that the fact that the game didn't sell. I didn't think it was good. But you see the issue that I'm talking about? When you have a new IP in a market where game development costs are this high, it is inherently risky to go with a new IP than it is to build a game for an established franchise. Uncharted 4 is going to be the best-selling PS4 exclusive. It's gonna be. Not only because the game will probably be good, but because it's from an established developer in a proven franchise. And the fact of the matter is that in this modern climate, where developers are getting paid jack shit and having to be working 12-hour days just to get games out because games are too expensive to make and don't rake in enough money because they don't sell enough to, you know, satisfy a budget that's too big, you see the issue with going, well, actually, let's try something new. And part of the problem rests with the gamers not buying into new IPs. I mean, this is another topic that I think we can lead into organically. A lot of the new IPs that we've seen have not tried anything new. Destiny is not a unique game. It's not. It's another vapid shooter that really doesn't do anything unique. I mean, really, Destiny is an example of a new IP that was really what you could see as a launch of a franchise. It was from Bungie, they put that into the marketing, they hyped it up, pretended as though it was new, but it wasn't. It wasn't new. Watch Dogs, that they hyped up that it was doing something new, when in reality, it wasn't. A lot of the new IPs, and I mean, Rise Son of Rome, that fucking abomination of a game. They didn't market it as anything new, but it was the same shit we've seen before. So we have these new IPs that, yeah, they set up new universes, new characters, new stories, but at the end of the day, they're new IPs in name alone. They borrow and really copy a lot of the same elements from established franchises. And that's what happens. So even when we have new IPs, which are inherently risky to begin with, developers aren't taking the risk to make them unique. And the problem, I feel the problem is that we've got a lot of gamers who claim that they want new IPs, but don't buy them. See, here's the thing with me, right? I want new IPs, and when I see one that's good, I will actually go out and buy it. Like, I mean, if I got presented the choice of, like, okay, so you're gonna get Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, or, like, Dying Light, a game that I didn't even really like that much, I would choose Dying Light just to show that I'm in support of a new IP. Even if it isn't the newest or best thing ever. Because I understand that the issue is like, well, I gotta pick the game that's best for me, and I get that, but the problem with the new IP is that rarely is it gonna be this fantastic game to start. It just doesn't happen very often. For every Deus Ex, there is like a Destiny, where it's just not good to start off with. You know what I mean? And that's the problem that we have with new IPs in this modern industry. Game development costs are too high, that it is inherently risky, much more risky, to invest in a new IP than it is to invest in an established franchise. I mean, we saw last generation that Sony were actually very open to establishing new IPs, you know? Like, Sony had a lot of new IPs last generation. Infamous, Uncharted, well, I mean, we had a lot of ones that were kind of smaller name. We had reboots of, like, Twisted Metal, we had that Starhawk game, and a lot of them didn't do that well, but at least they tried. But it's pretty clear that trying and then not having those games sell, it's like, well, we tried, but they didn't sell. How about we just make the same games as we used to, and that shit will sell? And it does. Because gamers say that they want new IPs, but then they don't buy them. And I think it's about time gamers were really upfront with developers about what they actually fucking want. I'm not talking about telling them what ideas to implement, because, to be honest, a lot of gamers don't really know what the best ideas are. That's the developer's job, you know? They are game creators. They know better in terms of what sort of things to implement to make better games. But I think gamers need to actually be honest and admit whether or not they really want new IPs. I do. I'm sick of a lot of the franchises now. There are a lot of franchises I just don't care about anymore. And I'd like to see new IPs, but not just new IPs, new ideas. That's part of the reason why I'm looking forward to seeing what Guerrilla does with this new RPG that they're making. I mean, to go from making one of the most boring and unoriginal shooters in the Killzone franchise to this brand new IP, that's good. And like I said, this applies to all the companies, because I had a lot of people getting mad at me for singling out Microsoft. Okay, I'm not. It is a thing that I want to see across the board. I want to see Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo all invest in more franchises. I mean, Sony's been doing it a lot, which I got to give them kudos for that at least. They do it more than Microsoft and Nintendo do. Nintendo are starting to get their feet wet in the idea with games like Splatoon, but they need to keep going. And Microsoft, obviously, like I said yesterday, they got to get their new IPs coming, because I think that gamers, while they don't buy the new IPs, I think we all want something new. And I think game sales for a lot of established franchises show that, with the decline that they're on right now. And it will save the industry from stagnation. I mean, when we get new IPs, it won't be long before we'll be getting these awesome, like 9, 10 out of 10 awesome games that everybody wants to play. And that's what I'm looking for. I want new ideas for this new generation. Because to be honest, if we don't get the new IPs and we don't get the new ideas, what the fuck was the reason for buying a new console in the first place?